You're watching Force 13's live streaming service. Good morning, this is Force 13 Live, and we're now covering the hours up until Tropical Storm Barry makes landfall in the United States. It's currently got winds of 65 miles per hour and a pressure of 993 millibars at 1 a.m. Central Time, this July 13th. No changes with the National Hurricane Center's latest advisory as we continue to watch the storm. Our coverage continues live, hopefully, up until landfall. My name is Nathan Foy. I'm here in the studio. It's currently 7 a.m. here at Force 13 HQ, 1 a.m. Central Time, and I'll be here for the foreseeable covering the latest on this storm. With me is a extremely dedicated team who are up at this time of night, consisting of David, Isaac, Thomas, and Nelson. Good morning to you all.
Good morning to Nathan, and good to be here once again.
Once again, indeed.
Morning.
All right, well, I don't think we're going to be going at a hugely fast pace here. Let's start with the warnings that are in effect. Just in case you weren't aware by now, they haven't changed a huge amount in the course of today. A hurricane warning for Intracoastal City to Grand Isle, a tropical storm warning for the mouth of the Pearl River to Grand Isle, and Lake Pontchartrain and Lake Maurepas, including metropolitan New Orleans, and Intracoastal City to Cameron. A storm surge warning for Intracoastal City to Biloxi and Lake Pontchartrain, a storm surge watch for Biloxi to the Mississippi-Alabama border, a hurricane watch for the mouth of the Mississippi River to Grand Isle and Intracoastal City to Cameron, and a tropical storm watch for east of the mouth of the Pearl River to the Mississippi-Alabama border. They are expecting 3 to 6 feet of storm surge in Intracoastal City to Shell Beach, 3 to 5 feet from Shell Beach to Biloxi, 3 to 5 feet in Lake Pontchartrain, 2 to 4 feet from Biloxi to the Mississippi-Alabama border, and 1 to 3 feet in Lake Maurepas. They've also said a storm surge of 2.7 feet was recently reported at a National Ocean Service tide gauge at New Canal Station. Still expecting up to 20 inches over southeastern Louisiana and possibly up to 25. I'm not quite sure we're going to see that much now from this point forth, I should clarify. On the left-hand side, you can see what we're expecting in the next 5 days now. A further 12 inches in New Orleans, 6 inches in Gulfport, and 5 inches in Baton Rouge and Jackson. Let's first speak to Nelson with the latest because he is in the area. Nelson, what's going on?
Well, mercifully in the New Orleans area, not much is going on. I've recorded a peak wind gust today, that being in the last hour at my house, of 25.1 miles per hour. There's not much rain here. It seems that the forecast for rain over New Orleans proper is at least delayed, if not completely shifted to the west. I don't really know much else to say. I know that there are wind issues in places like Homa, which is in Lafourche Parish. New Iberia, Grand Isle is without power, all 2,800 households there. But for right now, I'm in a very good position, and I'm thankful for that.
And just a minor point that appeared on the bottom of the screen there, Nelson is no longer head of Force 13 US. He ran through his term earlier this year. I don't know why it still says that on the blurb.
'Cause you miss me.
Oh dear. All right. If you've got any comments or questions for us, we are here to stay. start your message with Force 13 all in text in the chat section. I mean, very interesting that quite a few people are staying up late with us to track this. If you are in the path of the storm, I wouldn't recommend that. But then again, I'm not sure, because if you are along the coast, of course, you will have to remain vigilant. But if you're inland, I think hunkering down and getting a bit of sleep if possible during these morning hours, because we could, considering that the rain is still offshore for the most part, we could maybe see, if the flooding is going to occur, it looks like it's going to occur during the morning or afternoon of Saturday.
I would agree with that, Nathan. And it looks like where the flooding is really going to be a problem is going to be more towards central Louisiana, the areas like Lafayette, Opelousas, New Iberia, Houma, Thibodaux, and even Baton Rouge, where they are higher than most of the levee protection systems, that being the spillways, where the Mississippi River is basically drained into empty land. They are looking at flooding commensurate with 2016 levels, which was very bad for the area. My sister and her husband live in the area, and so do his parents, and they had quite a bit of damage during those 2016 floods.
Yeah, I don't know much about that flooding scenario, just that I saw it in passing somewhere. Was it a generic tropical disturbance that did that?
At this hour, I can't exactly remember, but I don't think so. I think it was. I think it was more river runoff from the north down through the Mississippi River. But the flood stages at Baton Rouge are being exceeded at this moment, or near being exceeded at this moment, depending on what gauge you look at. And with the totality of the rain moving to the west of the New Orleans area, they are going to get the brunt of that heavy rainfall.
All right, let's also hear from Thomas. You've not had much to say so far, but I think you'll be quite pleased with that, because you've been streaming all evening on the channel.
I have been streaming quite a bit, but I do have a good bit of things to say. Since last time we were on the air, Barry has really started to look a lot better, a lot more consolidated, and it's kind of really, the center is supposed to be right about here, according to the Hurricane Center, but I'm really starting to question if the center could have wobbled in, and the center is actually right around here at this point where all this convection is coming from. And if so, that means that Barry has become a lot more symmetric. And while it hasn't deepened according to the Hurricane Center, now that it's become a lot more symmetric, I mean, this actually now looks like, from satellite presentation, a 65 to 70 mile per hour tropical cyclone. And I don't think we were exactly expecting it to get this organized, because it was very large, and I think we were expecting it to be moving a little bit faster by now. But the fact that it hasn't means that landfall could be slowed down. And
Hooray.
if steering,
That's great.
if steering is going to be as weird as it is, it could really just be on this slow jog for a while, and we may not even see a landfall until around noon Central Time tomorrow. I mean, that's really
Or
this
today,
rate.
as it now is.
Well, today, yeah. I mean, we really could have to wait a very long time for landfall at this point.
Yeah, well, we do expect landfall to occur at some point during today, and the landfall zone would appear to, I mean, you know, even if it does reach hurricane status, it shouldn't be too bad, because the area that looks like it's going to end up hitting is marshland and unpopulated.
Well, there's good and bad with that. The good is, again, like you said, it's unpopulated. The bad is the storm isn't going to fall apart as fast, which means that farther inland areas could get bigger impact. So it goes both ways, at least in my opinion on that.
But fingers crossed, if we do get hurricane status, most of the hurricane force winds will not affect any populations.
Yeah.
At least not major population centers. However, towns like Jeanerette, New Iberia, upwards to Bro Bridge on the I-10 corridor are going to have significant issues, and should it become a hurricane, will likely be in the hurricane wind field, which will be small because it does not have a lot of time to deepen in terms of pressure or increase its wind speeds. But those towns are in the firing line.
Could it also be that, looking at our satellite imagery there, it's a big convective burst that's occurred, but it is waning in those late frames? What will happen next?
Well, at least to me, it's going to be what normally happens when you get a tropical storm. The convection can really burst, and as you know, and as we've seen, when storms intensify, that convection starts to go down, but a core starts to become better established. And I think this might be very establishing its core, and with that, the convection is going to go down. You might even see some rolling in the clouds in the middle. I don't think that an eye is going to form, but I do think that the beginnings of an eye wall may be what's going on here. And it may actually get itself a good central core go. I don't really know because I'm not sure. I can't find much microwave on it at the moment. I can attempt to find some microwave imagery just on a few channels here. None that's fantastic, but it looks like this could be the beginnings of a core on this tropical cyclone.
Alright, we've not shown viewers the warning maps yet. First of all, the key messages, the latest information here from the National Hurricane Center. Danger of life-threatening storm surge inundation along the coast of southern and southeastern Louisiana. Portions of Lake Pontchartrain and portions of coastal Mississippi where storm surge warning is in effect. Water levels have already begun to rise in these areas, with peak inundation expected to occur on Saturday, later today. The highest storm surge inundation is expected between Intracoastal City and Shell Beach. The slow movement of Barry will result in a long-duration heavy rainfall and flood threat across the central Gulf Coast, across portions of the lower Mississippi Valley, and north into the Tennessee Valley through the weekend into early next week. Flash flooding and river flooding will become increasingly likely, some of which may be life-threatening, especially all across portions of southeast Louisiana into Mississippi. And hurricane conditions are expected along a portion of the coast of Louisiana where a hurricane warning is in effect. Interesting that they put that last. There is so many other threats that are currently in play with this storm. So there's the forecast track as of the 1 a.m. Central Intermediate Advisory 11A from the National Hurricane Center. 65 miles per hour they're sticking with, a pressure of 993. We see no reason to deviate from that at the moment, and you can see the warnings illustrated there too. They do expect it to remain as a tropical storm for a good 24 hours after landfall as well, so it could reach northern Louisiana still with tropical storm force winds and enter Arkansas as a tropical depression. This is the earliest reasonable arrival time tropical storm force winds. For what it's worth, I suppose it still could be useful for many of those people who are inland, but tropical storm force winds have reached most of the coastal areas now. And those are the chances of tropical storm force winds on the map. So near 100% over a large chunk of Louisiana this morning. There is also a rainfall graphic showing 15 plus inches expected. That's a 15 plus further inches on top of what we've already seen so far. For some areas there. New Orleans around, they're actually going much lower than what we're putting it down as. I think we're calling for a further 12 inches, but the National Weather Service graphic only going with about 6. So that's an interesting development. And the chance of flash flooding, the risk of flash flooding, 50% high over a large chunk of the state as well, extending into a tiny part of Mississippi too. Is that up to date? Yes, that imagery is up to date there, which is nice to see. And that's just another look on Barry. I think Isaac's also here as well, which we haven't spoken to so far. Hello, Isaac.
Hello, Nathan.
What's your take on the current scene, and especially that potential core that's developing?
Well, this storm's been trying to get its act together for like the past 3 days. Fairly futile, but this time it's a little bit different. Now it's form, not starting to form, but starting to burst out some really cold convection near the center. I believe the center is still located just in the northwest of that big blow up of convection. But if that center were to get situated right over that big cloud top, then we would completely different scenario here. But for the time being, I think it's doing all right at the moment. I'm just looking at buoy observations from near where the storm's at, and the highest gust that I'm seeing is from a buoy. The buoy is reporting 69 knot winds, gusting wind, the 59 knot sustained from that. And that one's located at 28.87, 90.48.
So that puts it to the east, just from the center of the storm.
Yeah, but so far it looked just trying to consolidate itself. Earlier, it looked like it tried to have that classic kind of like hook towards the left there that we see in a lot of, but it kind of diminished somewhat in the last few times.
Also like to point out that Tropical Depression 4E exists in the Eastern Pacific and has done for a few hours. Doesn't look very good, didn't on that imagery just before it went off there. Even the software didn't like it very much. It's completely taken that away from the screen. Great. Alright, let's go back to Barry on Thomas's screen. Anything you'd like to point out there?
Again, what you've been saying, the convection is really starting to fade away, but what we're noticing is as this fades away, you'll notice on the 1 minute imagery just before it ends, you'll notice this little feature here, this little blow up that begins, and I think that this could be the next blow up as this one begins to wane of convection. And honestly, I think that if this is going to get to hurricane status, this is going to be that I think Barry needs to separate itself from the rest of this convection that's competing for energy, and I think it just needs to really consolidate. It's consolidating. It's not separating too much, but it's gradually going to probably begin doing so soon. And now that that convection is really going on Barry, it's starting to look a lot better. I wouldn't be surprised if we have a hurricane knocking on our doorstep within the next 6 hours.
Alright, we got some breaking news. Tornado warning associated with this storm right now, in effect for part of Louisiana. Where we're looking at here, Port Sulphur and points north of there, 2,800 in this area. Radar indicated tornado warning as of 1:30, valid until 1:30 this morning. So that is the latest information. If you're in any of these areas in southeastern Louisiana, that is a tornado warning. Take cover now.
And there it is. You can see it very clearly, and it's just simply, again, a radar-indicated tornado. This is evident from radar-based velocities. There's rotation associated with this that could produce a tornado. So if you're within this tornado warned box near Port Sulphur, again, and you probably should be taking cover right now. Most tornadoes are not violent and long-lived, but we have seen some before, so don't take this lightly. This still is a possible tornado. Please do take cover as soon as you can.
Did someone want to add to that? Okay. David, are you there right now? I think you might.
Yes, I am.
David
Yes,
joins us from Australia today.
Yep.
You've been watching the situation as well. Any news for
I
us?
have been. Well, as I've said throughout the life of the stream, the storm surge, rain, and flooding are going to be the key items. The pressure has come off the Mississippi. They were forecasting around 20 feet. It's down to 17. Nelson might be able to
You mean
bring.
inches? Are we talking about rain here, or?
Sorry, feet. The flood water.
Oh, okay.
It's 17 feet below the 20 feet that they were really concerned about. Our monitoring the social media Twitter, and we're also simulcasting once again on the Facebook and the US channel.
Yeah, we do have one or two questions. First of all, do we think it will stall out and move to the north, which is what one person here is suggesting?
What direction do we give it at present?
I would say it's northwest.
I'd say it's northwest, but I'd say it's moving very slowly. If we actually take a look at the real upper level flow, this doesn't have much influence at the upper levels. You can see this is what's giving shear. This 300 millibar high is what's causing the storm to undergo wind shear with the southerly flow that's keeping it southward. But what we're noticing here is that if you take a look, there's obviously a weakness that's allowing this to go northward right now. At the lower levels, it would actually influence it to go this way, but be front, it's going to do kind of something like this. The thing is, though, that if we go to the 500 millibar level, you'll notice this was the jet at 5 Zulu yesterday. This is 24 hours ago. We had the high over here, and we had the trough really digging in. This started to take advantage of that and move northward. We expected the weakness to remain. We expected the front to come in, pick it right up, and that it would be well on its way to Louisiana right now at a relatively quick pace. What's actually happened is, if we advance this into the future, you'll notice we start to see this connection. We start to see this building of this ridge. And because of that building of the ridge, the storm, at least from the upper level charts, looks like it's moving very slowly, if not virtually stationary, at least at the 500 millibar height. And because of this ridge now that's really coming around it, it really doesn't have much of a place to go. If anything, current steering flows at the upper level are going to be pushing it in a southwesterly direction, while flows at the northern level of the atmosphere are going to be pushing it in a northwesterly to northern direction. So we'll have to see moistures really wrapping around Barry right now, and it's really starting to strengthen. And the thing that's going to occur as it strengthens is it's going to have more influence in the upper levels. The upper levels are going to affect Barry more, and the more that the upper levels affect it, the more this ridge is really going to be able to get a stronghold on it and keep it stalled out here for longer, if not actually making a track farther west than what's currently expected.
Crazy thought that is, isn't it?
Yeah, and I mean, if we look at models here, I mean, there's good agreement that it's supposed to be headed north right now and make landfall, but it's not headed north right now, due north to northwest. It's headed west-northwest, which is not what was expected by a single model on this map. The GFS didn't agree, the HMON, the HWRF all didn't see that coming. So the question is now, how far west is this going to manage to travel?
Yes, and people have been. There's been a lot of attention around Texas and people saying, "Is it coming over here?" Because they were talking about that last night, I think it was, because some people saw that it was moving west, and then when that false center of circulation earlier today moved through and that threw a few people as well, because it did look like a good center of circulation, but it wasn't the actual center of circulation, and the actual whole thing itself was still moving northwest, and it still is now. But I still think by far we're looking, it's probably going to be a steady course, slow and steady, up to central Louisiana. Landfall I still would put near Marsh Island. And then moving in.
Yeah, and I wouldn't disagree with you. It's definitely gonna be headed quite close. It's not gonna hit Texas. That's for sure. I don't think that it's going to hit Texas.
Having
At
said
least,
that, some of the tropical storm chances in Texas have risen a little bit. I think the highest there is, oh, let me just take another look here. The highest chance, well, you've got Houston at 6%, the whole 6%, 10% in Galveston, and 25% at Port Arthur right now. 25%.
that is high. The thing is just that it's moving farther and farther westward, and now that the center is much more centered, if you will, within convection, it's not going to be very difficult for tropical storm force winds to be very symmetric. So if Barry were to make a landfall further west than expected, even within the cone, something like this, the tropical storm force winds, especially with shear, still make it over. So it's not like it's impossible for this to happen, especially if it goes way west, in which case that would really be a strong possibility. The odds of it going way west are relatively low at the moment, but the more that the ridging starts to strengthen, I guess more than expected at the upper levels, the more of a probability there is of this thing headed farther west.
And this type of storm is more difficult to predict as well because of the slow movement, but I think it's just something that arises from its nature as well. I mean, we look back at other storms that occurred at similar times. I'm always thinking of the Hurricane Danny example, and I don't know what they forecasted, but it stalled just off the coast for about 2 days as a hurricane. Just to name one example.
Yeah. And it really just, it really is a hard storm to forecast. And like you said, that's probably just part of its nature. But with the difficulty of forecasting the storm, it really does kind of put the mark on. I mean, we're less than 24 hours away from landfall, and there's a chance that the forecast could go awry here, and this could go farther west than the cone of uncertainty currently depicts. I don't think it would head into Texas, but it's going to probably, at least in my opinion, it's got a good shot of heading farther west by a significant margin than expected.
Indeed. All right. Nelson, any other comments? Anything that's developed in the last half hour? Have I lost everyone? I think
He still got me.
Yeah. He must have taken a minute away.
I'm sorry. I do apologize. I was on mute. I was having a few technical issues, but nothing of real import other than you did mention Danny, and I do not think this is going to take the same jog to the east, mercifully.
Well, no. I'm just using that as an example of tricky forecasting.
Of course, but I just don't know what this system's going to do. I've never seen a system look like this, and though we've seen many stall near the coast, this is just something for the books, I would say.
All right, we're going to take a short break here at Force 13 HQ. We'll be back with more after this. 1:30 Central Time this morning. We'll be with you through the night here on Force 13 Live, tracking Tropical Storm Barry, which has winds of 65 miles per hour and a pressure of 993 millibars. That was as of the update 30 minutes ago, and we have lots of warnings that are in effect, pretty much the same ones that we were previously mentioning. But just to reiterate those warnings for you right now, a hurricane warning is in effect for Intracoastal City to Grand Isle, tropical storm warning for the mouth of the Pearl River to Grand Isle, Lake Pontchartrain and Lake Maurepas, including metropolitan New Orleans. Tropical storm warning, Intracoastal City to Cameron. A storm surge warning for Intracoastal City to Biloxi and Lake Pontchartrain. A storm surge watch for Biloxi to the Mississippi-Alabama border. A hurricane watch for the mouth of the Mississippi River to Grand Isle and Intracoastal City to Cameron. A tropical storm watch for east of the mouth of the Pearl River to the Mississippi-Alabama border. We're expecting 3 to 6 feet of storm surge for Intracoastal City to Shell Beach. 3 to 5 feet Shell Beach to Biloxi, Mississippi there. Also 3 to 5 feet Lake Pontchartrain. 2 to 4 feet Biloxi, Mississippi to the Mississippi-Alabama border. And in Lake Maurepas, 1 to 3 feet. You're up to date, and we're looking again at the most recent satellite imagery, trying to figure out whether this core is here to stay, and you know what that means. We could possibly see an eye developing sooner or later.
Yeah, and it's kind of it's gonna be really strange if we see an eye-like feature develop from this. And I'm thinking about 6 hours from now, once we're at about 6 Zulu or so, I think that we'll really get not 6 Zulu, around 12 Zulu, I think that we'll get a much better idea of really where the core is at. And
all right, Thomas,
really
this tornado warning is shifted north, so there's a lot more people now in the tornado warning. Radar indicated pea-sized hail possible. A population of 26,000 in this tornado warning that's in effect until 2 a.m., including these areas: Shell Beach in the east, and I think it's Murrow in the west.
Murrow. Yes.
And all points in between. So that's not too far from you, is it, Nelson? Oh no.
If we look at velocities, you can see a well-coupled, a good-looking couplet, to say the least. It's not a fantastic couplet when it comes to strength, but it is a good enough couplet when it comes the fact that it may need to be tornado warned. I don't know what's going on with the software, but
oh yeah,
it's gone much brighter, but you can still see the darker green to the lighter green. That should be reds over there. I don't know why it's not, but that's the potential tornado. I mean, it looks okay. It doesn't look fantastic, but still, you should be taking this serious.
all right. We're just taking stock here. If you've got any questions for us or any comments, we're here all the time. So start your message with Force 13 if you have anything for us. And we'll hopefully get back to you. It's a quiet chat at the minute, of course, at this time of night, so I'm sure we won't miss anything. In the meantime, I'm not really sure where we go from here as we just continue to gaze at it. We've not actually seen radar of the storm center. Is that possible?
I believe it might be. I'd have to get as close to the coast as I can. We'll see.
I'm looking at some radar right now, and there may just be what could be the center south of Vermilion Bay. That is an indentation in the middle of South Louisiana. just I say just off the coast, probably about 40 miles off the coast, may be the center of circulation as it exists right now. Let me try and see if I can bring it up on screen share.
Yeah, I'm not seeing much of it, if there is one. So you'll have to point out that feature. Here we go.
Or looking at pretty much the same thing.
It's just around that small shower area. You can see it curling. On my radar, it shows an 81-degree temperature out at a oil rig. And I think that might be the closest thing we have to a center of circulation, though there may be other vortices around that.
So that still is roughly 40 miles displaced from the peak point of the convection.
Yes. And when we looked at some of the Hurricane Hunter recon observations earlier, a lot of the stronger winds were far displaced from the center. Again, when you look at it on infrared, I don't know what to make of this storm. I do think it will turn into a hurricane before landfall. I don't know when landfall is going to be at this point, but that's the best we get on to what might be the center.
All right,
And
so if we
convection.
assume that is the center, that would be just 60 miles from Morgan City. And 30 miles from the nearest point of land, which is that little area that sticks out opposite Marsh Island. I'm not sure if that has any name.
Yeah, I see what that is. I mean, we do have this convective flare-up that's displaced north of the center of the convection, but still within the convection itself. I feel like it's near the same general area as Nelson's radar is picking it up. So I would have to say that's probably where the center is, because you can see the convection firing off really right where the center would be, and that's where convection typically tends to start firing, is where the lowest pressure would be. But the issue is the center looks almost like, at least from Nelson's radar there, to be moving in a northeasterly fashion.
Northeast.
If you take the radar, I would agree with you, but again, there may be so many smaller vortices at the lower levels that we just cannot figure it out.
And I have a feeling that might be what's going on. You know, the thing is, I don't even know if Barry knows which center is its actual center. If that makes sense. Like, I'm kind of tempted to say that there are multiple centers competing right now for dominance, kind of like you would see in an invest of sorts. Like, it's quite strange.
Well, I mean, you know, I don't think it's too strange to have, in a wider center of circulation, tiny little mini depressions within that. I mean, the biggest example in this region was, of course, Cindy 2 years ago.
Yeah, it just looks like there might be some sort of competition for energy that I don't normally see. At least I don't see often. I don't know about you.
No, not saying it happens every day, but this type of behavior can happen sometimes.
Yeah.
I remember it had like massive vortices circle. Some.
I didn't quite make that out. All right, let's let's go back to the automated stream here. That is a picture of Barry right now, the more recent image. And this, just in case you wanted to know about it, is Invest 98W in the Western Pacific, near Yap right now, and looks terrible. Now that we've mentioned that, let's move on to the latest from the National Hurricane Center for Barry. Key messages there, you can always find that in full on the National Hurricane Center's website. And this is their forecast as of the 1 a.m. Central Time Intermediate Advisory 11A. They're expecting a hurricane landfall later on this morning, or even, yeah, still this morning they're expecting that. And then later on there you can see weakening as it moves inland. If the National Hurricane Center are right, they're calling for a landfall at maybe about 7 or 8 a.m. Which makes sense to me at the minute. But we were talking last night at the current pace that it was last night, my time, that is, about 8 hours ago, that it would make landfall round about now. But obviously it's slowed down, and it is still a good 30 miles offshore, and is not closing in very quickly at all. I mean, National Hurricane Center have it moving 3 miles an hour. Logic dictates if it moves in a straight line at that speed, it will take 10 hours. So anything could happen. What we do know is that tropical storm force winds are affecting a large chunk of Louisiana right now, and that's going to remain the case for as long as it stays out at sea. The sort of the lesser of the evils really is that if it makes a quicker landfall, it will weaken more quickly.
At this point, Nathan, if you'll give me a chance, I'd like to address a question in the chat. At Force 13, if it moves further west, what would be the expected flooding on the North Shore area across the lake from New Orleans in the Hammond area? Well, Hammond isn't going to get any flooding from Lake Pontchartrain, though it sits a little between Pontchartrain and Maurepas. But Hammond is on a bit of higher ground. There are rivers running in the area. I would think the biggest threat in Hammond is from rainfall, but we don't know where the rainfall is going to be because initially we thought there was going to be a lot of it concentrated over the New Orleans area, extreme southeast Louisiana. But right now, as we see it on radar and the radar screens up as we're looking, we just don't know. There's nothing in Hammond right now, but these bands, as the storm moves west, are going to start strafing the areas. They're not very large, they're thin, but if you get it in that northerly direction, you could be under rain for quite a bit of time. How severe it's going to be, we really don't know until we know the speed of the storm and where it's going to move.
What you can see on the latest satellite imagery is how close the big bursts of thunderstorms are now getting to land, and this could be the beginning of this rain event that we might see later on this morning. If that rain spreads inland, if there's more blow-ups further north, obviously you're looking at your radar as well. You can see one or two little lines of potential storms that are pushing through there. Obviously one of them is tornado warned, and that is set to continue by the looks of things.
I would agree. I would say that the storms near Shell Beach, and actually I'm cheating a little bit because I'm looking at the local news, the areas nearest Toca, Verret, Martello Castle, That's where the Doppler indicated tornado is right now, headed towards the Michaud Space Facility and Michaud Boulevard, up to Little Woods, and then towards the Wrigley's through Slidell. But as you see from the radar, those storms are not just moving north anymore. As they get to the upper side, they take a little bit of a westerly track. So I would
Yep.
say that the first bands impacting Hammond would be those that are currently right now out in the New Orleans East area, Michaud Boulevard, near the Mr. Go or the Mississippi River Gulf outlet.
Yeah, interesting. And if you just look further towards the east there's another line that's approaching. Where's that? Mississippi.
Yes, that's it's nearing Ship and Cat Islands. Will be impacting Gulfport at some time, given the rotation of the cyclone itself. Not necessarily rotation within the storm, but I would imagine Gulfport, Biloxi, those areas will be impacted by some heavy precipitation within the next 30 minutes.
So that's certainly something to keep an eye on. Just checking to see what information we're getting. There's a lot of severe thunderstorms occurring in North Dakota, of all places, this morning, but nothing really related to Barry right now, just that tornado warning that was in effect, that still is in effect until the end of the hour. A radar indicated tornado in eastern Louisiana. Along the coast there. Thomas, any thoughts?
The tornado warned storm, I mean, again, it looks like it's a bowed out and elongated storm at this point. And it looks like there isn't a very concentrated area of vorticity anymore, at least judging by reflectivity. Nelson already gave a good rundown of where exactly the tornado is, if it's on the ground. But again, it's radar indicated, and we're going to be seeing numerous radar indicated tornadoes throughout Barry's impending landfall. And it's going to be with these spiral bands. I mean, this band has produced at least a rotating thunderstorm. This band could produce a couple.
Yep.
And we're just going to see band after band. And the thing about these is it's kind of strange. The most favorable conditions for tornadoes occur in areas that quite low on cloud tops, because there's very little in the way of the convection itself. Something that you will notice, though, and it's a part of the reason these tornadoes are being produced, you'll see the lower level flow headed this way to the east, and the upper level flow headed to the north, and that creates wind shear. And with that shear, we can get tornadoes. And it's really going to be interesting. Something else of note is that we were talking about the northeasterly movement of the center on Nelson's radar there, and if you look closely, you can see where this convection flares up at about the same relative geographical location as Nelson's radar, and you can see again that general northeastward motion on what I think can be assumed as the dominant center of circulation, due to it being where the strongest convection is and where convection has been firing off over the past few hours. So I think we can generally say that that's the center itself is moving northeast right now, even if it's just a wobble, while the rest of it is really moving to the west.
Yeah. We did have a question about Recon. What are they up to?
That's a good question.
It's a very good question.
Tropical tidbits.
I've got no idea.
It doesn't have the latest recon data, I don't believe.
We'll just show Nelson's radar whilst you go have a look.
They haven't updated in like hours. Guess they have like a data outage or something over there.
You're exactly right, Isaac. I've checked numerous websites, and I can't see anything from about 130 Zulu to 220 Zulu, depending on the mission. One of them's back in Florida. We can only assume the other one's back at Keesler.
so we can't find recon data, which isn't good news.
Well,
But
obviously, recon data is factored into National Hurricane Center advisories, so we will be kept in the loop at least with them.
However, though, there is. Excuse me. I don't know why my voice did that. There is a buoy that's near the storm right now, and the highest gust it's recorded so far has been around about 70 knots or 69 knots, rounded out to about 70 knots, and the highest sustained wind it's got so far is about 60 knots or so. I don't know the specifics on the sustained winds. I don't know if it's like 30 seconds, 10 seconds, or 1 minute, but the sustained winds are 60 knots from that buoy.
Well, that's not very helpful.
Yeah.
But what people might possibly start to see, especially there are a lot of platforms and offshore weather stations. They might report hurricane force winds, but especially I think there was a commotion because a drilling platform or something was reporting hurricane force winds, but imagine just how high that must be above the water as well. And it's out at sea.
Exactly.
Well, that was the Mississippi Canyon platform. I believe it's Apache Energy. I'm not quite sure on that. Do not kill me if I'm wrong. But the anemometer there is 90 meters above sea level. It's very high on the platform.
So there you go. I mean, that is not a reliable source when it comes to figuring out how strong this is going to be when it strikes land. Well, obviously it is already striking land, but at the surface, that is way above the surface. 90 meters, how high is that in stories?
90 meters is what, 270 feet, so 27 stories, 30 stories.
So we know how it can be in tall buildings with the stronger winds up there, and that's just the same with that particular reading. What is the highest surface wind that we've had recorded so far?
Good question.
That buoy there might be a good measurement, but again, that one is out at sea, so you'll probably get higher winds out at sea as well. But on land?
Nelson, what was that one that I asked you and you checked up in a earlier broadcast?
Well, you did mention the Mississippi Canyon drilling platform, which is what we just discussed. I've seen radar indicated, so I don't know if it's a gust or sustained. It was near Grand Isle of at least 50 miles an hour. We've seen gusts of near 50 miles an hour in a bunch of places, but I could not tell you what the sustained winds are.
That tornado warning has been moved north again here. As you can see, the area is shifting quite quickly. That tornado warning now affecting 51,000 just east of New Orleans by the looks of things. That radar indicated tornado. The warning's still in effect until 2:15 and shifting north, and I-10 now in that as well. The main places
Going
there,
back.
Violet and Poydras. Isaac?
Going back to
Well,
that.
Nathan. No, sorry. Go ahead, Isaac.
If your information is more important, Nelson.
Go ahead.
It's not.
Okay.
Okay, I was just gonna say, at the 10-meter sustained wind speed at the buoy that I was mentioning earlier, it looks like it was about 47 knots or so at the 10-meter level. So that's about, what, 30 feet or so? Is that about right, Nelson?
10 meters is about 33 feet.
33, okay. So that's what the winds were at that level.
Alright. Well, we're going to take a break now here at Force 13 HQ. We'll be back with more coverage on Barry. Our next hour of coverage is actually going to be our 11th hour of coverage here on Force 13 Live. Taking you through the overnight hours. We'll be here watching the storm draw ever nearer to land. Back in a few. Stay tuned. Continues in a moment. You can follow Force 13's outlets, the website force13.com, our YouTube page, youtube.com/Force13, on Facebook under the same name, Force13, and our Twitter handle, it's @Force13 if you wish to get in touch. You can also add Force13 on Skype, and my personal account on Discord, Fool13, at extension 9094. You're watching Force 13's live streaming service. In US Central Time right now, 8 o'clock here at Force 13 HQ. Good morning, this is Force 13 Live. We're taking you through the overnight hours here with Tropical Storm Barry, which threatens to reach hurricane status later on. Okay, that doesn't appear to be working. Okay, it's working again. We are talking about the storm, of course, again in this hour. If you'd like to send a message to us, you can start your message with Force 13 all in text. Our full coverage of the storm continues into an 11th hour here. In this hour, I'm joined by several people right now on our team. We're joined by the same people as we were last hour. It's David, Isaac, Thomas, and Nelson. Good morning to you all.
Good morning.
And good
morning,
evening
Nathan.
from
Good
East
morning.
Coast of Australia.
Always
5
has
a.m.
to be different, David. Oh,
I know I've got to be different.
All right then. So we are here to stay. So that's great for anyone who is watching at these hours. Hopefully we can be of some use. The storm has been continuing to move towards the northwest. We continue to reanalyze and look at the situation all the time. Let's take a look at some new satellite imagery. Looking here, this is the latest convection on Tropical Storm Barry. Just about to move inland. Don't forget that tornado warning is still in effect until a quarter past, just east of New Orleans, heading towards the northwest. So, do you have any information on that, anyone? Thomas? You've got a presentation there at least.
Yeah, so right now the tornado warning is in effect for northwestern St. Bernard Parish in Louisiana and central Orleans Parish in southeastern Louisiana, and that lasts until 2:15 a.m. Central Daylight Time. It's a radar indicated tornado, and the storm will be in East New Orleans around 2:05, and it'll be probably around the city of New Orleans, according to the National Weather Service, around 2:15. This tornado is moving in a generally northward direction. It looks to be moving, generally north right now. So we'll see what happens. It doesn't look like the storm's producing any hail, which is good news. But still, this will be in effect until about 15 past the current hour.
If I could add on to that, that cell that's moving through, it's past Violet right now. It's heading real close to the Mississippi River Gulf outlet near Louisiana 47. It's just about on top of Michaud, probably about 2 minutes from Little Woods, the I-10, 510 intersection. About 2 minutes away from there. It'll be a little bit to the west of the Highway 11 and I-10 bridge across Lake Pontchartrain. I am getting some rain at my headquarters right now from the same